Tabasco sauce in his mouth. And I need to put Tabasco sauce in his mouth after that one.
Anybody who watches this just probably thinks we just come here for lunch all the time.
What it's all about.
And conversation, it's so fun to be out of the office and talk to the mayor.
Hey, I've told my
I like
people,
your video, by the way.
Which one? I feel like they've been draining me on social media. I hate it. Which video?
The one on Jenny's site there.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jenny. As soon as we filmed it, I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that my home neighbor is so supportive of it, because I had seen a few, all of a sudden, my next door neighbor, this big of a vote no. I was so offended. I walked over and I'm like, Mike, why'd you put that up? And he's like, because I wanted one to vote no. So do you know anything about it? And my husband came walking down the street because he saw me pull over. And he was like, okay, so we're just gonna take her home. We're so sorry. Sorry, Mike. She just does this sometimes. And it's been a long day. She just needs to go home. And
Keep doing it.
so I text my
Yeah.
deputy mayor, Isaac. I'm like, Isaac, run over to the cops' house. They just put up this big, huge sign and Steve won't let me talk. So you go talk.
Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started. We are live, is that correct? So I'm going to welcome everybody to the October 13th, 2020 Utah County COVID-19 Economic Recovery Meeting. Like to, for roll call, everyone is here either online or in attendance, with the exception of Commissioner Ivy, who is excused today because they're in budget meetings. So that being said, let's go ahead and first address any public comment that we have.
None.
No public comment came in electronically. Do we have any public comment here from anyone? Hearing none, I'll close the section for the public comment. Next item on the agenda is item number 2. This is an update on the small business grant application. So let's get that update.
Yep, I
I'm
will take
excited for
that. So we have been open for 8 days. Right before this meeting, at last check, 146 submitted applications for 1.5 million in asks, 300 pending applications for another 1.5 million in asks. And again, with those pending, it's hard to know if those will translate into submitted applications. We do continually reach out to all of those and encourage them if they are eligible to apply, but it's hard to say how many will come in. There's postcards around the table. We printed out 1,900 of these English-speaking postcards. We used the book of lists to mail them out. We also targeted salons, restaurants, a few other industries that we know were hit hard by COVID. We've also been hand delivering them. We printed out 100 Spanish-speaking postcards and have been hand delivering those with the guidelines printed out in Spanish. We also delivered the English-speaking postcards to all of the cities that have economic development staff or contacts, so they can also target businesses in their cities. And those went out early last week. So we're sending email blasts out. We have a Facebook ad running. We continue to encourage everyone to share on social media. So that's where we are as of today. Yes, the Herald printed an article on Friday.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
How's our response been on the 1099s? Have we seen them pick up?
Yes, we have. Just at a quick glance, I would say about 15 of those. There are a lot pending. We hand delivered stacks to salons and encouraged them to hand out to all of their 1099 employees. And so, and there's a lot in the pending. Hopefully those will come in, but we have done an effort to try to reach them.
Okay. Good. Any questions? And I think you guys, once again, have been doing a great job. It's
Thank
good
you.
to see that you guys are all over this.
We were hoping to have more applications at this point, but
Well, we'll talk about that today, see if there's things we can do to help with that. Okay, review of the bylaws and deadlines.
Yep. And so in conjunction with the review of the bylaws and deadlines, I'll also update the meeting, the presentation to the county commission last week. They reminded us that according to the bylaws, this committee has until November 16th to expend the funds. And at that time, if the funds are not expended, the funding goes back to the county. Any adjustment to the bylaws need to be approved by the county commission. It was not popular to distribute the money directly back to the cities for a number of reasons, concerned about why we would do it based on population. And Amelia expressed concern because if it was brought back to the cities, the county would still have to make sure those funds are spent on time, and the county is required to spend those funds by December 31st, and the county would still have to track the city's expenditures. That was not a popular idea when presented to the county. So as it stands right now, we have you all have a November 16th deadline to get the money out of the door.
And if
Or-
all our, I'm sorry, if all our applications are approved,
Mhm.
how much money does that give us left to spend?
Currently 1.5 million, but the deadline is not until next Monday at midnight. So 1 week from today when we meet, we'll know exactly how much money is left on the table.
So as of right now, we might have 4.5 million.
Mhm. Yeah, but with 6 days, I do think we'll at least get to 2, I would hope 3, because we're just barely over halfway in. The postcards have just arrived. There was no mail yesterday. They either arrived Saturday or they'll arrive today. We're not gonna get to 6 million. I would hope 3 is kind of my best case scenario. We've thrown a few ideas up on this board just to spark conversation, but certainly this is up to the committee. You all were given stewardship of the $20 million to use for economic support. You all set up how to distribute it, and certainly you all can make the decision under the guidelines of the bylaws on how to distribute the rest. So just a few ideas: small business, extending the deadline, opening it to businesses from round 1, target businesses using new guidelines. A few of you have mentioned specific businesses in your cities that either didn't qualify or they received first round but need substantial new funding. You can go to the commission and request an extension or a change in bylaws. I honestly don't know how popular that would be. Nonprofits, there was still 2.3 million in unfunded asks that are still on the table. There has been also some discussion on targeting nonprofits outside of round 1, specifically the arts programs. And then we just threw up housing programs because we've seen that going around. By no means is it a comprehensive list, just a way to spark conversation.
Michelle, I wanted to add one thing. There's quite a bit of discussion in the county about charter schools. I know we had a discussion here about it, but the county was saying that the charter schools should be on the table, and I don't.
Commissioner Lee did ask that this committee reconsider the funding of charter schools. It did not fall high on the priority list that you all set up, and so ultimately it was decided that due to the districts and the charter schools not being on even footing and them not scoring well, the committee decided to deny all those applications. Commissioner Lee asked you all to reconsider that.
So our position on there was the fact that they were like a school districts, and they are receiving funds.
Yeah. If we open it to them, we feel like we're gonna have to open it to the school district.
Don't
right?
they,
Which is
don't the students that go there, they get their funding diverted?
proportional amount.
Yeah, they're diverted to those.
You follows them.
They don't get federal.
Let me, if I can jump in a second, let me add what Commissioner Lee was saying. He was saying that the public schools were receiving a different funding, additional funding, COVID funding, that the charter schools were not. And that's the reason why he made that request.
Do we know that for a fact?
I don't independently know that. I just know that's what he raised.
Would be the need in a charter school. Why would this have affected them? Just they're not fundraising themselves or something, or?
I can pull up some of the
Well, they're
applications.
buying
Mhm.
PPEs, right?
Oh, so
And
Yeah,
maybe
that was-
the barriers.
That,
So they've had those expenses.
okay, that's fair. I was just trying to think like, why would they have less money coming in? But I guess it's more
Well,
money going out than coming
Yeah.
in.
A lot of reason they don't get as much money as the public schools is they're smaller. So it's based on student population, how much money you receive.
Sure.
And so by population, they're a smaller school or smaller district. So they're not receiving as much money as school district gets.
And it wasn't all PPPs. It was also, I'm just looking at one, but I remember also there was payroll that the charter schools were asking for, rent. So it was above and beyond PPP as well, depending on the individual applications, but we could certainly get you those details if you were interested in those.
I think it'd be important to make sure we understand the facts, and it'd be nice if somebody could do some research and find out exactly what the public schools have been getting.
Mhm.
And find it- Because my gut feeling is, like you said, you had somebody that was on the board that you talked to and was very definite about it. So I'd say it's almost worthless to have the conversation until we know what the facts are, right?
Just because somebody throws it out doesn't mean it's fact until we find out.
Yeah, we could take that on.
We've learned that in politics, haven't we?
Once.
Or twice.
Yeah.
You know, but there were a number of nonprofits that I know of that after seeing people that have applied, some of the nonprofits that could have applied, didn't apply. So if we've got some extra money, maybe we can do that again.
So Mayor Frost is on, and I hope you can hear me okay, Mayor, because he and I had this conversation, and there's a lot of things that came up in that conversation that I hadn't even thought of as an example. And I would hope that as mayors, maybe all mayors can think of the same things. And so Mayor Frost, you can chime in if you want, but let me just say, he talked about some of the nonprofits that are associated with the city that never applied. And I got thinking about it. We've got one nonprofit we had two actually that were associated with the city and received some city funds through different resources. But we got a whole bunch out there that never even applied that I hadn't even thought about. They're the nonprofits. We have an arts community, we have the archives, we have a historical group, and we got a lot of groups that are filing under 501c3s that are separate from the city, and there's no reason that they probably shouldn't qualify for some money, since the other two that did apply did receive funds. Mayor Frost, you mentioned you had several groups that were in that category. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. I would think of a half a dozen that probably would, if we went through another round, even with a nonprofit, or opened it up for both small business or nonprofit, I would probably encourage them a little bit stronger to put in. I do not know why they didn't put in. I don't know if it was the paperwork involved, and I tried to explain to them that this was as simplistic as you could ever find. But or maybe they just felt like they wouldn't qualify. I don't know. But yeah.
Just has some insight on possible barriers.
I was speaking with Crystal from the Utah Cultural Alliance, and she said that the reason most of the nonprofits and the reason her organization was discouraging arts organizations from applying is because there was a difference in the amount of funding that a nonprofit could get as opposed to what a business could get. And as a small nonprofit, they both qualify as a nonprofit, so they don't have to pay taxes, but they also qualify to be able to operate as a small business. So they felt that they couldn't apply to either program because they didn't qualify fully.
But they could have.
They could have, I tried, but
Way too honest.
Well, we probably have to leave that up to whoever their accountant is as they go through the paperwork, but I'd certainly want to, when we look at this board and see the opportunities, I mean, there's two things that stand out to me right off the bat, and that's this nonprofit conversation, that we perhaps should include the nonprofits with small business in the second round. Just leave it open to any of those opportunities. And the other thing is extend the round 2 deadline. We ought to extend it out as long as we possibly can to sweep in as many applications as possible.
Now, did we just do 90% of the nonprofits?
Yes.
Yeah, 90%.
But fund the 10% again.
So is
That would bring them up to 100%.
Is this
Yeah,
the same fully?
Yeah, there's 2.3, so
Yeah,
we can
so-
come back and give them the extra 10%, just all the ones that qualified. Here's your additional 10%.
I
So-
sure don't want.
The 2.3 also includes all of the denied applications and the $500,000 to the Food and Care Coalition. So if you refunded them all at 100%, it wouldn't get to an extra 2.3 million. And I can get you the exact dollars in a minute.
Do we, do we have to, if we extend an additional 10%, if we refund them to 100%, are there hoops we have to jump through, or can we just send them a check?
Peter, does the county have any issue if they decided to increase the nonprofit fund? And
As long as we have the initial application, in fact, that would work with both the round one, round two nonprofits. If the community decided they wanted to, for example, give another check to all the businesses that were awarded in round one, and maybe just give them another, allocation, then you wouldn't need to go back and have them apply again. You could just say, we have some money left over and we decided to give you some more.
Were we not bound by 15 and 5?
We said, no.
That was
We
last
told
We
time.
them
just change that.
We're the one that said that.
Just one other crazy idea. Can you just make it super easy? Like, have a third round where it's just, anybody can just, I'm a business basically.
Well, that,
And then divide it like we divided the nonprofits kind of.
I don't know that that's not what we're doing in the second round, because this is still open, and so we're talking about modifying it right now, so it includes nonprofits, and, we can just open this up. You don't want to say just if you're a business, you get money.
Well, now I was being a little generic, but
Yeah.
what are instead of 15 requirements, we're talking, am I business, 1, 2, 3 things, I don't know. I guess you are right, it is kind of,
You have to show
if we're
that.
opening it up again, and we could refund the first round people additional if we needed it, they kind of.
I like the idea of doing the additional for the businesses, because it was kind of low, it's $20,000 with the highest it could go, and then the nonprofits, we really upped it there.
Are there any specific business needs that each city could say, if you have a certain amount that you have left over and you said, we're gonna take the remaining 1 or 2 million and we're gonna give it to each city and say, Payson, here's $20,000,
I think
$50,000,
that's what
whatever, for economic development.
That's
for
it, yeah.
That's what the
future
county
business
turned down, I
growth,
think.
Or whatever, and I mean, I'm an economic development director, so that sounds a little bit selfish, but I'm just thinking, are there specific needs that each city could identify that if we gave it to the cities and said, use this for economic development, business promotion, or business ability going forward? We could do something like that.
I think they're right, that's what we tried to do with
That's what we tried to do.
But
But I do.
But if they've applied, we can basically give them more and more and more, right, Peter?
If
If they've applied and we determine there's a need,
Yeah.
the easiest road forward might just be to go back to the existing pool and just give them that.
Give them money.
One case that I know, that's almost like, it makes me feel guilty, like a windfall for them. Does that make sense?
Well, it might be, but if it were really held
But
down.
the other 90% is gonna be.
But they applied for that amount. That's what they asked for.
Yeah.
So what you say.
They didn't ask for another probably 10,000 though.
It's
No, no,
just-
we're
That's all we allowed them to do.
We're just adding to what they asked for.
So
Because we only gave them 90%.
that's on the nonprofits.
Oh, that's right, they're not right.
But
Here's one question.
the businesses that I know that have applied, that got money, would have asked for more if they could have. And those that got it were very grateful, but said, if there is a second round, could we get more? And so I think to the point that you're saying, I think if you went back there and we found a way to allocate more, there's definitely a need. They just didn't ask more because they couldn't.
And we've already got that matrix in place.
Yeah,
Very easily.
And the problem we're finding is trying to find a way to get to other businesses to apply. To me, it's almost like the ones that are going to apply have, and either the other ones don't because they can't, or they don't qualify, or I don't know, whatever.
Would it be hard to go back to the ones that we gave and actually say, hey, what do you need? Rather than just throwing an X amount of dollars out there?
We could easily contact them just with a few clicks of a button. I think just
Yeah, I gotta-
deciding
I
how to
gotta-
determine need.
I got a suggestion, because I think that's gonna be hard. I'm gonna
It
just make
would-
a real, I like simple solutions.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes the simplest solutions keep you out of the greatest trouble, so. So I've got the 4 things that we need to extend the deadline. We can include nonprofits, some of the, open it up a little bit more. And if that includes loosening some other business guidelines, we could do that. And these are kind of in order of priority too, by the way. Number 3, take the 90% to 100% of the nonprofits. And then 4, increase amount of the distribution, but we increase by the amount of however much money is left. We
You
spend
could-
everything.
You could extend it to a certain deadline, and at that point, divide that by,
Yeah, well,
do the math, right?
once we get through this, once we get through the deadline, we evaluate all of them, we make sure we still have, we will, right? We have 2.3 million we can get back in that 10%. We still should have money left over, and then what I'm suggesting is item 4, that's the 4th step.
Take the balance.
Take the
divide it.
balance and distribute it among those. And you got 3 different groups, right? You got the $10,000 group, wait a minute, 5, 10, and
15 and 20, it's 5 to 20, wasn't it?
What were the groups?
20.
The new
Yeah.
group is 5, 10, 15, 20. The original was 10,
Okay.
15, 20.
so we look at all those groups. So the question is do we just want to give them a flat amount, or do we want to give them a percentage of what's left based on the group that they qualified for?
Seems easiest.
Well, it's probably more appropriate, because if you're a small, real small business and 5,000 was your amount, you give everybody an extra 5,000, you just double that. You don't want to do that, right? That's probably, yeah, not appropriate.
Too simplistic.
Some people get
Right.
more help than others.
But I think it's important to include 2 things in the calculation. First of all, you prorate it out, how much money's left, prorated amount, those businesses. And then you scale it based on their mentioned original qualifying amount. Does that make sense?
I can't believe you came up with that.
I'm working on it all night long in my sleep.
Really.
Somebody
I'm
had,
almost impressed.
somebody had it written on his paper.
Somebody wrote it right here.
Yeah, I like that. I'm good with that.
I do.
We'll distribute everything if we do that.
Yep, I want it back.
So we just need new deadlines, or do we just go, I guess we don't need a,
So if the county needs to, how do you define spent? So the deadline to spend this money is November 16th. Is that transferring to MAG, or is that MAG mailing out the checks on November 16th?
That may be a Robert question, but I'm thinking that has to be, we've made the awards, we've determined the allocation at that point in time. Cash transference, I think at that point is just an accounting.
Okay, so if the committee met on November 10th to make final decisions, would that be considered spent? If that was the final awards were made November 10th, and then MAG could turn the checks around the next week?
Yeah, from an accounting standpoint, we basically determined the allocation at that point, and the cost would be incurred. So I think it's just a matter of cash transference at that point.
This is Robert Moore. Let me just kind of read to you what has been discussed. The county actually adopted an ordinance approving this committee, and in the ordinance, which also approved the bylaws that you guys established, says the committee has until November 16, 2020 to disperse the 20 million of CARES Act funds. Any funds remaining from the 20 million of CARES Act funds that are not dispersed on eligible expenditures on or before November 16, 2020 must be returned to the county on or before 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, November 23rd, 2020. So the county will have time to reallocate and expend the funds before they expire on December 30th, 2020. The committee may petition the county to retain the allocated but undispersed CARES Act funds after November 16, 2020 with the approval from the county. Any request for exceptions shall be emailed to Peter Brown, Finance Manager, COVID Project, and the County Auditor's Office before 5 p.m. on November 16, 2020. So question comes is what does dispersed means? So that's really what we're talking about.
Accounting definition is that it's the check is cut and sent. So we've actually, we probably need to have checks cut by November 16th.
Does that kind of answer the question, or do you need some further direction on that?
We could have the checks cut by November 16th. If you all met the 10th, cut checks.
Isn't the county just gonna use their COVID money, CARES Act money for payroll though? First responders payroll?
They haven't decided yet.
Oh, because then they probably, if they're gonna roll it into that, then maybe we could buy an extra week of time, because they don't need to have decided how they're gonna spend it by December 31st. They're just gonna roll it all into payroll.
Yeah, I think it's more of the issue of the process of bringing or sending it back to all the cities, or to extend the deadline with all the new voting and challenges with that. I think they're more interested in the simplicity. Just in respect.
Let me remind you, this is Rob Moore again. What happened originally, as I recall, is all the cities have a deadline of November 2nd. And originally, when this committee was formed, we were talking about that same deadline for this committee. And my recollection was the request was made by the committee to move that deadline for a couple weeks to November 16th. And that was basically, the commission was okay with that. I think you guys were okay with that. What it seems like to me that you would be able to do is, if you go ahead and meet on November 10th and you make a selection on dispersing these funds, any remaining balance, and the checks are in the process of being cut, all it says is that you need to make a request to Peter before November 16th at 5 p.m. And so you could make that request in a letter that just says, you know, they're being dispersed currently, that everything's being accounted for, the full 20 million spent, and checks will be sent out, are being sent out, and possibly will be sent out within the next day or two, and just kind of leave it at that. And I think you'd be fine. Because the provision does allow for you to ask for an extension. And it sounds like you will already have it rolling in place by November 16th anyway, and possibly even done.
Just get it done and print it out.
We got a formula,
That
it
seems
works.
simple. Yeah, I mean, obviously. they
I'm
want
just
all
curious,
the
with your department with elections,
Michelle said it could
is
be
that
done by
breaks down with also
16th.
this, or you're separate?
No,
from
we
elections?
don't deal with the elections. The department leads do, but what we're doing, we will be dealing with elections at all.
Okay, so doesn't do any really, okay.
The challenge we have is that because of the way that CARES funding is set up, we have to expense it by the end of the year. And the way the county's budget is set up, I have to expense it and have goods received. In other words, my cash has to be, I have to cash basis it as well before December 30th. And so that's why we have those backdate situations, because we essentially have no ability to account for this after the end of the year.
So just for clarification, if you went back and fully funded instead of the 90% all the awarded grants, $1.2 million, this also includes the additional $500,000 to the Friends of Utah Care Coalition for the property that we're breaking ground on Thursday. And then this is all of the denied applications that include the charter school, the elevator for $450,000, and the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools.
What did it include, Strawberry Days?
Oh, yeah, anything that was declined is in that, yeah. And so if you just want to go back and fully fund the awarded grants, it's $1.2 million.
Jason, you and I are going to apply.
Well,
I think,
no.
I think our
Yeah,
declined
yeah, don't need to get
applications,
started on that.
our
Yeah.
declined applications were for valid reasons that we should
Yeah,
look at that.
yeah. If they're declined, then we're not going to go back. and get
Yeah,
it. If we approve them, then we can bump that money up.
Okay, so that would
So
be
that's how I
1.2
see it.
million.
I'm not going back and,
Does everybody agree with
I
that?
agree.
yeah.
So we're guessing, of course, we're gonna have about 3 million left over perhaps. And if we automatically give 1.2, that'll give 1.8 that we could distribute. How many total applicants would be in round one and round two? I know that's kind of,
I'm sorry,
how many applicants were there in round one that we approved?
774.
And then if we get about 300 or 600 more, what are you thinking more?
Yeah, I mean, you were gonna prorate it depending on what they asked for the first time. But that is
I'm just like, just
something,
trying to do rough math. And if,
Mhm.
let's say there was 900 people that we had to give money to. I guess that's still $3,000 each. And obviously there'd be a scale. Some people would get $1,000, some people would get
Right.
5,000.
Figure out that.
Yeah.
So it seems reasonable. It's not just like, it's cutting a check for $20 or anything. It would be meaningful, I believe.
We wouldn't do anything.
We don't need
So he keeps saying,
I
how
know.
does that be?
Ow.
So,
But I'll come and buy a Ritzy Poppy at the gas station, so you'll have a tax base.
Mayor Staley, here on your question on including other small businesses, that's one thing that's kind of not defined. How do we define that?
Find what?
it was just an idea. I almost think it makes sense just to say round one and round two people, we're gonna give you $1,000 more. You know what I mean? I don't know. How do you open it up to make it easier to everybody? I was just trying to think almost like a lottery place. If you are a business, you get a ticket and you get $1,000, but then maybe that's.
Yeah, but you missed that whole calculation
The
of
need.
But going back to what
justifying
Peter's
why.
point.
Yeah, that was why I was,
There's gotta
what's
be
the
a
three
need.
things we'd have to do? You still have to have a
Gotta show
need.
need.
So
Okay,
Peter,
so I'm gonna
We've
take
already
off
got
the
the
small
structure,
business
we
thing
gotta
because
use
I
it.
don't
Yeah.
think we can
I
define
think
that.
we've already,
Okay,
you
I
know,
was
they've
just
applied.
throwing brainstorm.
I just didn't want to ignore it.
No, that's,
For round, if they went back for round one and awarded more, would round one businesses need to provide any additional documentation to
No.
the committee?
No,
Okay,
that's why I think it's a good idea,
Okay.
because it's
It's
just,
already done
Yeah.
out there.
Already got our
Yeah.
structure, we already put it together.
just a matter of your committee determining the distribution of of additional funding.
but the additional funding would be for round one and round two people, right?
On round two people just getting their funding, just
I
because
don't
it's
just want-
ongoing right now. I don't
but
know
if
if
they're-
they get additional, would they?
That's what I'm asking. I don't know. It's,
I don't, know what we get to consider what they get anyhow, so I don't think it'd be
Well,
additional.
Except
In
for,
in the same way that. the-
because that 900 I did would have been distributed to everybody again.
I think round two still caps out at
twenty.
And then we
20,000.
decided they'd get the same amount as round one because we didn't think it was fair for round two
to get
to
more.
get more than round
No,
one.
no, but when round two's done, do you award the 1.8 million to everybody or
To
just
round
round?
one and round two.
That's what I
That's
said.
what I
Okay.
said.
Yeah.
As long
Okay.
as we can,
I'd say because
If there was any
anybody
money
that
left.
applied,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
don't only go back to round one. You
No,
go,
you get
open
one
it,
and two.
divide it by everybody.
I think
That's
it's
fine.
better to divide it by both because they're both limited to an amount.
No,
Exactly.
that's why I'm advocating
So-
too. I just wanted to make sure. it's
Okay.
clear.
well, I understand. that.
Yeah.
perfect.
So
Okay.
I would suggest then extending the application no later than Monday, November 2nd, because that would give us time to thoroughly review everything, bring it to the committee, make the final decisions, how much more they would be getting, awarding the nonprofits, getting the approval, cutting the checks before the 16th.
I'd suggest the 30th. Let's just do it the
30th,
last
okay.
work day of this month and
Okay.
give you at least an extra day.
And if,
I'm like Mayor Lason. I do not want to be caught on the technicality that we end up not being able to distribute this money.
so, pie in the sky, what if we do get $6 million in asks? Is that, or do you
Well,
want
then
us?
that change, that's why these
That
are in
changes
order.
everything.
Okay.
Yeah, that's-
Okay,
That's,
Yeah.
so we'll make
So
that
these
the
are
motion. There'll be
contingent.
an order in the motion to go
Okay.
through.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So
We'd
there's
love to have
actually,
6 million asked.
there's 5 things that need to be in the motion because we also have to direct MAC staff to investigate school funding. Because there might be a change based on that.
On that.
We probably ought to have that discussion. What if there is a change? What scenarios would cause us to fund charter schools?
Well,
We don't know yet if that's.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I say we might have to list the scenarios. If we find out they don't get any funding at all from the state,
But
then maybe
even-
they should get it.
Even then, I worry that it would, to make that fair, you have to go out to all the charter schools and say, apply for this, because you're now eligible. There's only a handful that even applied. And I know there are way more than that.
yeah, and there, so yeah, then you open a whole different.
Add a couple of weeks probably.
When you don't add to the original round and you don't add to the second round, you may not even have to add to the nonprofits if there's that much need out there.
There wasn't a lot in their ass. But you're
But there
right.
was a double ask because the Association of Charter Schools, who
Mhm.
represent all those schools, were asking, plus the individual charter schools were asked. So it was like a double dip there.
But I completely agree. Charter schools I mean, my wife works for a charter school. They didn't ask, they have a number of charter schools, it's a send, right? I asked her about it and they said they just didn't, they didn't feel they needed it. So,
So we need to know, once we know, then we can make a
so we
decision.
wait then, and
Yeah.
when do we make that decision though?
How do we find out?
Special meeting?
No.
Then how do we do
In
it?
our last, when we're gonna meet to determine how this is all. gonna-
Okay, just,
Just
no one
determine.
final, okay.
Yeah,
Alright.
isn't it? So when that happens,
Okay.
we can add them into the mix if we feel that that's.
Okay, when we got the data, then we
The other thing
can.
is, how do we distribute to those that we don't know?
I think the other option,
Well, we don't, that's the problem, because they didn't apply.
And it's just like any other, a lot of the
Okay, I guess
nonprofits
it's
that didn't apply,
They did have a chance. to
they
at
had
one
a
time.
chance, all
Fair
these
enough.
others had a chance, so, I mean, we can't go back and say, hey, what if you should have, or didn't, if you didn't, you didn't.
They already chose to or not.
I think the other option as well is we can just stay with our original decision, and if the commissioners feel like charter schools should get some funding,
They got
they
45
can,
million.
they can use their county funds. That's what Salt Lake County did.
They can use their
That's a
money.
good point.
They got a little more than we do.
Well, I think there's a really good argument to be made that school districts are not the same as businesses, right? And so they probably should qualify under the other CARES money. And that was $90 million worth of it. We're having a hard time getting rid of 20 million, right? There's 90 million out there. 45 is the counties. So, and the few that asked, which was, as I recall, 5, right? And one was a double ask. That didn't total a lot, but to me, that ought to be a whole separate program instead of the one we're running right here.
Seems more education based than
Business.
business or
Business-based.
nonprofit.
Nonprofit.
That's a really good argument. It doesn't fit into our bucket at all. It's
Because
education.
they're not a
That's my point.
nonprofit organization.
I like that.
I just, yeah,
And once again, come up with.
I'm on a roll.
You are on, you need to pay this.
It'll change as soon as I get city council today. You know what I mean.
I get
All right.
Okay, so the 5 things is, authorize MAG to investigate school funding. Or do we even need to do that?
I don't
at all?
think we even
Just
need
not
to.
do
I don't
it?
think we need
I
to.
don't,
Okay,
I
let's
think
fix
we
that.
take that right off the
Just take it
table.
out.
It's
That's
education.
not even an issue anymore.
I did make a good
Yeah,
argument.
you
didn't I?
talked us right out of it. Thank you.
It saved them a lot of work, so that's enough.
Okay, yeah, like that. Okay, so extend the deadline to December or October 30th,
30th, yeah.
include nonprofits. Take the 90% to 100% on the small businesses,
On the
No,
nonprofits that were,
nonprofits, I'm sorry, on the nonprofits. It's deteriorating already. Okay, and then amortize the remaining amount in the distribution rates based on or as per qualifying amount.
And were we gonna be able to, because other nonprofits that didn't apply, we're just not gonna do that?
Well, they still.
No, they will, they'll
they
apply.
still
That's
won't-
item-
In the round 2 that we're.
that's item number
Okay.
2.
Okay.
So we're, yeah, that's the second request.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hate, if we had all these cards printed out, but now you're gonna have to handwrite every one of them.
Yeah, I can just copy and post it. I can have that ready for today. Let's
Okay,
see.
anything else?
Just one item of clarification, and we can do it really fast. I could get it today. The nonprofits do have different documents that we required, but we can get that application open today and direct nonprofits to the nonprofit application.
Okay, and will you get us some new advertising material?
absolutely.
We'll get it out?
Yep.
In anticipation, I've already,
Sure, that was just for the new nonprofits that hadn't done it before.
Yeah, new nonprofits. Mhm.
On the
Yeah,
date we
just
change
under
our
our
list.
current business application, it would be, they wouldn't be able to supply the information. We can copy the old one over today and get it
And
open.
include that.
Mhm.
Mayor Frost, does that help address some of the concerns you had last time?
Yeah, I think my biggest concern was getting it into the right hands of the right people more than anything. So I'm comfortable with everything. I feel bad that we had these cards made up and we're changing the narrative a little bit. But I think in the end I think that's a good plan. And we have good steps. If we run short, we can just look to the other applicants to give them more additional money. If you receive 5,000, maybe you're going to get an extra 1,000. If it was 10, maybe it's 2,000. We can do the quick math and we can make this and it'll be right. So yeah, I think we're good.
Just one clarifying question for the nonprofits that are going to be applying for the first time. Is it capped at 20,000 like the small businesses?
Capped at 20,000 plus whatever is left over to distribute.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, that's what I think.
20,000, they can ask for 20,000 and then they may get more. Okay.
Well,
They'll get more divided.
depending on.
Depending on
how many
what's
employees.
We might have 6 million asked. Just using
But
their,
I'd be good with it.
The order is important because it gives us the structure to follow until we run out of money.
Yep.
And the nice thing is the last two categories allow us to distribute based on whatever is left over.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a motion if somebody would like to make it.
I'll make the motion, just what Mayor Johnson discussed just now.
And I'll second it.
Is it all clear? I was hoping somebody would restate it so I could hear that.
Well, you got it in front of
They're
you.
written down, they're ready.
You got it all right, perfect.
Do you want me to read?
Yeah, read
Okay.
it just to make sure we're.
Okay, extend deadline to October 30th, include nonprofits. Increase nonprofits allocation from 90% to 100%
That were approved.
that were approved. Hold on a sec. And the last one I had, advertise remaining amount as per qualifying amounts.
No, that's.
Is that what you said?
No, so that one's increase the distribution amount based on remaining funds and establish a percentage of payment based on their original application
Okay.
or qualifying amount.
And so establish what?
Thank you.
Mayor Reese.
And establish what?
Establish.
Until November
I know,
3rd.
it's wording,
Well,
so let's
no,
think.
no.
So establish.
See, I had it down perfect.
I know you did. Okay, you got the first three right, so right on the money, so
Allocate remaining funds
According to percentage base
of the original ask.
of the original
of the
ask,
original ask.
or the original received, right?
Well, that's the question, because then we have, which one is it?
Yeah.
And I don't like, the thing I don't like about the ask is some ask for a lot more than they probably should have, right?
Yeah, let's do
So let's do receipt of the original amount received or awarded.
Okay, so increase distribution amount based on remaining funds.
To be dispersed.
Yeah, to be distributed to those based on qualifying amount. Awarded. Yeah, awarded. Sorry, not qualifying.
So.
Yeah. And you know what? If we do it by awarded, then we don't have to worry about the grouping of how much, because it'll just be a direct amount, an amortized amount based on what the award was.
Right.
That makes it even
Makes it a
easier.
lot easier.
The 20,000, you get something, 10,000, you get
Yeah.
something on the other.
Making it better.
See, it's a good thing we had it read back.
It's always good.
It's, I always.
You got it now?
read it
First,
back.
seconded,
So I
and
think we've
approved.
got it
Okay,
all.
we ready
Yes.
for a vote?
Yep.
Okay, any questions on the motion? I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Mayor Frost?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, passes. Done. I think.
Probably not meet again probably till November 3rd then.
November 3rd?
Yeah, that's probably.
So no October 20th?
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I'll take a final motion.
So probably next meeting, not the 20th, since
It'll be the
you all settled it, I don't think we need to meet until Tuesday, November 3rd. Yeah.
November
Mhm,
3rd.
Yeah.
Okay, final motion.
Second the motion and amen.
I don't know, it just slipped out just like that. It's just gone.
Geez.
We're losing. We're not gonna have enough to close this
Say
meeting.
aye, huh?
Yeah, all those in favor say aye.
Aye, whatever we're motioning.
We'll get out,
Delete.
we'll get out the new promotion